Let's talk about the one thing humanity has chased for centuries: immortality. But what if I told you it's not a gift, not some grand power? What if it's actually a curse? Okay, let's dive into this wild story from Greek mythology that pretty much proves it.
I mean, think about it. A life that never ends. Sounds like the ultimate prize, right? But what if getting exactly what you want turns out to be the absolute worst thing that could ever happen to you?
Because one man actually got it. He was granted a life without end. And his story isn't one of glory or triumph. Nope. It's one of the most disturbing and cautionary tales in all of mythology. His name was Tithonus. So our story begins, as so many great ones do, with a love story. But this was a love between two beings from completely different worlds. One was destined to live forever, and the other, well, he was destined to die.
So on one side, we've got Tithonus. He wasn't a god. He was a mortal man, a prince of Troy, in fact, young, strong, and just brimming with life. And on the other side, we have Eos, the goddess of the dawn. Every single morning, it's her job to cross the sky and bring light to the world. She's timeless, powerful, eternal. He's fleeting.
And one day, she saw him. And that was it. She fell completely and utterly in love. So desperately in love that the thought of him growing old and dying, the natural fate for any mortal, was something she just could not stand.
That unbearable fear drove her to do something incredibly drastic. She decided she was going to defy fate itself. And this led to a wish that would seal their tragic destiny: a single fateful mistake. Eos went straight to the top, to Zeus, king of all the gods. She begged him for just one thing: make Tithonus immortal. Grant him a life that would never, ever end, so they could be together forever. And Zeus, maybe he was moved by her passion, who knows, but he granted it. Just like that, Tithonus would never die.
It seemed perfect, the ultimate dream come true. They had endless time, no fear of being separated, no ticking clock. But in her haste, in her desperate love, Eos made a critical oversight, a tiny, tiny detail she forgot to include in her wish. And this right here, this is where it all goes horribly wrong. See, she asked for immortality, the ability to live forever. That part was covered. But she forgot the crucial second piece: eternal youth, the state of never, ever aging. And that single oversight, that was everything.
So Tithonus kept on living. But his body, his very human body, it didn't stop aging. And what followed wasn't an eternity of happiness, but a slow, horrifying descent into decay.
And this timeline just lays out the absolute horror of it. At first it was slow. His hair turned gray, his strength started to fade. Then decades passed, and he grew frail, his voice becoming just a tremble. But then centuries went by. His body just kept breaking down, shrinking, failing, and yet he could not die. The one thing that should have ended his suffering was the one thing he was denied.
Seriously, just try to wrap your head around that. Your mind is trapped inside a body that is just falling apart, getting weaker and more painful every single day, forever. He couldn't move, couldn't stand, couldn't even care for himself, and still, he lived on. The greatest gift imaginable had twisted itself into the most monstrous of curses. His eternal life wasn't a life at all. It was an eternal prison from which there was no escape. So what finally became of him? Well, the myths have a few different endings. Some say a heartbroken Eos just locked him away in a room, unable to even look at what he had become. Others say he withered away until all that was left was his voice, and he was transformed into a cicada, chirping endlessly in the sun. His life became an inescapable punishment. And he's not the only one in Greek mythology. The myths are actually filled with these stories where eternal life wasn't a gift, but a terrible curse. I mean, take Medusa, for example. She was also given a form of immortality, but it was a curse. Her beautiful hair became writhing snakes, and her gaze turned any living creature to stone. She was powerful, sure, but she was doomed to an eternity of solitude, surrounded by the statues of those she destroyed. It was another kind of eternal, lonely prison. But Tithonus's curse was something else. It was a slow, relentless process, a constant state of decay from the inside out. Every single moment, his body, his mind, his spirit, all just worn down by the ceaseless, crushing passage of time that had no end in sight.
And still, he was forced to be.
And that was the ultimate horror. There was no end, no relief, no escape, just more. More time, more suffering, forever. So after a story that horrifying, you have to ask, what's the takeaway? What is this ancient myth trying to teach us about life, death, and the things we wish for?
Remember where we started this whole thing? Tithonus received the one thing so many people, even today, dream about. He got endless life. But without limits, without an end point, that life became absolutely meaningless.
And that really is the core of it all. This quote says it perfectly. The fact that our time is limited is what makes every moment precious. It's the ticking clock that pushes us to love, to create, to live fully. Death is what gives life its shape, its value.
Without that final, natural end, any blessing, even the gift of time itself, can warp and twist until it becomes the very thing we were trying to escape in the first place, a prison.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Knowing the story of Tithonus, knowing the real price of a life without end, if you were offered immortality right now, would you still take it?